Jake Martinez walked through the long hallway of the Galactic Council building on Nexus Prime. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridor as he made his way to the main chamber. Today would be different from all the other days he had spent here as Earth's ambassador. Today would change everything. For 30 years, humans had been members of the Galactic Council. They had tried to work with the other alien races. They had followed the rules. They had been patient. But the other races never treated them as equals. The aliens saw humans as young and stupid. They saw Earth as a small, unimportant world. Jake stopped at the huge doors of the council chamber. He could hear voices inside. The Veltar were speaking in their high-pitched voices. The Zephyrians were making their electronic sounds. The Korthok were growling their deep words. They were all talking about humans again. They were deciding what to do with Earth without asking any human what they thought. Jake touched the paper in his pocket. The message from Earth was clear. President Collins had made the decision 3 days ago. The people of Earth had voted. They were tired of being treated like children. They were ready to leave the council and go their own way. The doors opened with a soft hiss. Jake walked into the chamber. The room was enormous. It had seats for representatives from over 200 different worlds. Most of the seats were empty today. Only the important races were here for this meeting. Counselor Zelthara of the Veltar sat in her floating chair. Her purple skin glowed with anger, like she had been the one pushing to take away Earth's mining rights. The Veltar wanted the rich asteroid fields in the Kepler system for themselves. War Marshal Krexthal of the Korthok stood near his seat. He was 8 feet tall and covered in thick gray skin. His red eyes watched Jake with amusement. The Korthok had never liked humans. They thought humans were weak because they were not natural warriors like the Korthok. The Zephyrian representative was a floating metal sphere. It spoke through electronic sounds that were translated into words. The Zephyrians were machines. They had been machines for so long that they had forgotten what it was like to be living beings. They thought humans were too emotional and unpredictable. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. This was where representatives spoke when they had something important to say. He had stood here many times before. He had asked for fair treatment for human colonies. He had requested equal voting rights. He had begged for respect. Every time the council had ignored him or told him to be patient. The council has made its decision, Zelthara said. Her voice was like music, but Jake could hear the hatred behind it. The mining rights in the Kepler system will be transferred to the Veltar Mining Guild. Earth's contract is cancelled.
Out.
Jake felt his heart beat faster. The Kepler system was important to Earth. The asteroids there had rare metals that Earth needed for their spaceships. Humans had been mining there for 15 years. They had built stations and hired thousands of workers. Now the council was taking it away and giving it to the Veltar. This is unfair, Jake said. Humans have been good partners. We have followed all the rules. We've paid our taxes to the council. We deserve to keep our mining rights. Krexthal laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that made the floor shake. Deserve your babies playing with toys? The Veltar have been in space for 1,000,000 years. They know how to use those resources properly. The Zephyrian Collective agrees, the metal sphere said. Human efficiency ratings are below acceptable standards. Resource allocation should go to more capable species. Jake looked around the chamber. There were other representatives from smaller worlds. They all looked away when he tried to meet their eyes. They were afraid to speak up. They were afraid the big races would punish them too. The vote is final, Zelthara said. Earth will remove all mining equipment from the Kepler system within 90 days. Failure to comply will result in sanctions. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out the paper. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. He was shaking from anger. 30 years of insults. 30 years of being treated like a child. 30 years of being told that humans were not good enough. I have a message from the President of Earth, Jake said. His voice was steady now. The United Earth Federation hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber fell silent. Even the electronic humming from the Zephyrian representative stopped. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in the quiet room. We renounce all treaties, agreements, and obligations with the Galactic Council, Jake continued. Humanity will forge its own path among the stars. We no longer recognize the authority of this council over Earth or any human colony. Zelthera's purple skin turned bright red. You cannot simply leave. You need our protection. You need our guidance. Without the council, you will be destroyed by pirates and raiders. The council has protected us from nothing, Jake said. You have only taken from us. You have given us nothing but insults and contempt. We are done with your protection. Krexthel stepped forward. His massive form cast a shadow over Jake. You are making a mistake, little human. The galaxy is dangerous. There are things out there that would eat your whole species for breakfast. The council keeps you safe. Jake smiled. It was not a friendly smile. We will see about that. The Zephyrian sphere moved closer. This action is illogical. Human survival probability without council support is less than 12%. You will reconsider this decision. No, Jake said. We will not reconsider. The decision is final. He turned and walked toward the doors. Behind him, the aliens were starting to shout. Zelthera was screaming in her musical voice. Krexthel was roaring threats. The Zephyrian was making loud electronic noises. Jake did not look back. He walked out of the chamber and down the long hallway. His footsteps echoed again, but this time they sounded different. They sounded like freedom. As he reached his ship, Jake activated his communicator. This is Ambassador Martinez. Operation Prometheus is now active. Repeat. Operation Prometheus is active. All across the galaxy, human colonies and ships received the message. Secret facilities that had been hidden for decades began to power up. Research stations that the aliens had never known about started their final preparations. Military bases that existed in places the Council had never explored began to move. The galaxy was about to learn. What humans had really been doing for the past 30 years, while the Council had been treating them like children, humans had been preparing for this day. They had been building. They had been learning. They'd been getting ready. Jake's ship lifted off from Nexus Prime as it climbed toward space. He looked down at the planet where he had spent so many years being humiliated. He would never see it again. Humans would never bow to the Council again. The age of human independence had begun. The aliens would learn that underestimating humanity was the biggest mistake they had ever made. 3 months had passed since Jake Martinez walked out of the Galactic Council chambers. The aliens thought humans would come crawling back within weeks. They thought Earth would beg for forgiveness and ask to rejoin the Council. They were wrong, Captain. Lisa Brooks stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship Defiant. She was reading reports from across the galaxy. Strange things were happening. Beltar trade ships were disappearing. Not destroyed, not captured, just gone. Captain, we have another report, said Lieutenant Gary Stone from his position at the communications console. The Veltar freighter. Golden Wing vanished near the Altair system. No distress signal, no debris. The ship was there one moment and gone the next. Lisa smiled. She knew exactly what had happened to the Golden Wing. It was floating in a pocket of twisted space-time. 3 minutes in the past. The crew was probably very confused right now. On Earth, Admiral Susan Clark sat in a room that did not officially exist. The facility was built deep under the Rocky Mountains. No alien had ever seen it. No alien even knew it was there. Was where humans had been making their real decisions for 30 years, Report Admiral Clark said to the man sitting across from her. Dr. Richard Palmer opened his folder. He was the head of the Temporal Research Division, the displacement. Technology is working perfectly. We've successfully moved 17 Veltar ships through time. Each ship has been sent back exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds. To their sensors, our ships appear and disappear like ghosts. Any problems? Admiral Clark asked. None. The Veltar cannot understand what is happening. Their ships see us coming, they prepare to fight, and then we vanish. They fire at empty space. They think we have some kind of invisible technology. Admiral Clark nodded. Good. What about the Zephyrians? Dr. Palmer turned to another page. The logic viruses are spreading through their collective mind. Dr. Amy Foster designed them perfectly. The viruses look like normal data packets, but they contain impossible mathematical problems. When the Zephyrian computers try to solve them, They get stuck in endless loops. How many of their systems are affected? About 30% so far. Their trade networks are slowing down. Some of their military ships have shut down completely. The collective mind is starting to fracture. Admiral Clark felt satisfied. The Zephyrians had always been so proud of their machine intelligence. They thought their electronic brains were better than human brains. Now they were learning that human creativity could break any system. Far from Earth, in a place that existed. Between dimensions, Commander Helen Wright watched the galaxy through screens that showed every corner of space. The Andromeda Research Station was humanity's greatest secret. It existed in a pocket dimension that the aliens could not see or detect. Commander called Sergeant Bill Turner from his monitoring station. "The Korthok are sending a probe to Earth." "Let them," Helen said. "They will find nothing." She was right. The Korthak probe reached Earth's solar system. It found empty space. The sun was there. The other planets were there. But Earth was gone. So was the moon. So were all the human space stations and satellites. The probe sent its report back to the Korthok Empire. The message was simple. Humans had vanished. Their home planet was missing. There was no sign they had ever existed. But Earth was not gone. It was simply hidden. Human scientists had learned to shift entire planets into parallel dimensions. Earth still existed in the same place, but it was slightly out of phase with normal space. Humans could see out, but no one could see in. Back in the hidden command center, Admiral Clark received more reports. The disappearances were not random. Every missing Velter ship had been carrying weapons or military supplies. Every affected Zephyrian system was part of their defense network. The humans were being very careful about which targets they chose. "What about the Korthok probe results?" Admiral Clark asked. "They are confused," Dr. Palmer replied. "The probe found no trace of Earth or any human presence. The Korthok military leaders are arguing about what this means. Some think we developed teleportation technology. Others think we found a way to hide entire star systems. Both theories are partly correct," Admiral Clark said with a slight smile. The truth was more complex than the aliens could imagine. For 30 years, while the Council had treated humans like children, Earth's best scientists had been working on impossible projects. They had learned to bend space and time. They discovered how to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Had created technologies that the Council races had never dreamed of. Dr. Foster walked into the briefing room. She was carrying a tablet with more updates. Marthelder is starting to panic. They have lost 43 ships in the past month. Their merchants are refusing to travel outside of heavily guarded convoys. And the Zephyrians? Getting worse? The logic viruses have now infected 60% of their network. I know some of their colony worlds have gone completely offline. They're trying to create firewalls, but the viruses adapt faster than they can build defenses. Admiral Clark stood up and walked to the big screen that showed the galaxy. Red dots marked every location where humans had taken action. There were hundreds of them. While the Council had been busy insulting humanity, humans had been placing assets everywhere. Phase 2 is complete, Admiral Clark announced. Begin Phase 3. Across the galaxy, human agents who had been sleeping for decades began to wake up. These were not soldiers or spies in the traditional sense. They were scientists, engineers, and researchers who had been placed in alien societies years ago. They had married aliens, started families, and become trusted members of their communities. No one suspected they were working for Earth. On the Veltar homeworld, Dr. Pete Johnson had been studying their biology for 20 years. Dotto, his alien colleagues, thought he was researching ways to help humans adapt to Veltar environments. Actually, he was learning how to shut down their psychic abilities in the Zephyrian core systems. Engineer Nancy Kim had been working on their computer networks for 15 years. She had been trusted with access to their most sensitive systems. The Zephyrians thought she was helping them improve their efficiency. She had actually been planting dormant programs that were now activating. On Korthok Prime, Professor Carl Davis had been teaching human history to alien students for a decade. The Korthak thought he was a harmless academic. They did not know. He was mapping their entire military structure and identifying their weaknesses. All of these agents received the same message. Phase 3 was beginning. It was time to move from observation to action. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. The representatives from the major races gathered to discuss the human problem. They had expected the humans to collapse without council support. Instead, mysterious attacks were happening across their territories. "This is impossible," Zelthera declared. "Humans do not have this technology. They are barely capable of faster-than-light travel." "The evidence suggests otherwise," the Zephyrian representative replied. "Unknown forces are systematically targeting our assets. The attack patterns suggest advanced knowledge of our operations." Krextal slammed his fist on the table. "Then we find them and destroy them. The Korthok Empire will not be intimidated by these insects." But finding humans was proving impossible. Every time alien forces moved to investigate a disappearance or attack, they found nothing. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck their targets, and vanished again. It was like fighting ghosts. The aliens were starting to realize that they had made a terrible mistake. They had pushed humanity out of the council, thinking they were getting rid of a weak and troublesome member. Instead, they had unleashed something they did not understand. In her command center, Admiral Clark watched the reports come in. The alien races were confused and frightened. They were starting to understand that humans were not the primitive species they had thought. "How long until Phase 4? Dr. Palmer asked. 2 weeks, Admiral Clark replied. "Then they will learn what humanity is really capable of." The galaxy was about to discover that underestimating humans was the biggest mistake the council races had ever made. The war had begun, and the aliens did not even know they were fighting it. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council lasted for 3 days. Representatives from every major race gathered on Nexus Prime. They were scared. In 6 months, humans had turned from a minor annoyance into a threat that none of them understood. War Marshal Krextal stood before the assembled delegates. His gray skin was darker than usual, which meant he was angry, very angry. "The Korthok Empire will not tolerate these attacks any longer. We are forming a military alliance to hunt down and destroy every human in the galaxy." Counselor Zelthara floated in her chair, her purple skin flickering with worry. The Veltar agreed. "We have lost over 200 ships. Our trade routes are being disrupted. Something must be done." The Zephyrian representative, a silver sphere floating near the center of the chamber, spoke in its electronic voice. "The collective calculates that humans pose a significant threat to galactic stability. We support military action." Other races quickly joined the alliance. The insect-like Threx, the plant-based Florians, the energy beings, called the Luminor. They all wanted humanity destroyed. They called themselves the Stability Alliance. But everyone knew it was really a hunting party. Krextal was chosen to lead the Alliance fleet. He was the most experienced military commander in the galaxy. He had conquered 17 star systems during his career. No enemy had ever escaped him for long. "We will assemble the largest military force in galactic history," Krextal announced. 10,000 ships from 6 different races. We will find every human colony and destroy it. We'll hunt them down like the pests they are. The fleet began gathering at the Centauri staging area. Massive Korthok battleships arrived first. Their hulls were covered in thick armor and heavy weapons. Veltar cruisers came next, their sleek designs built for speed and psychic warfare. Zephorian vessels appeared like geometric puzzles made of metal and energy. Lieutenant Commander Paul Johnson watched the alien fleet from the bridge of the human stealth ship Nightfall. The ship was invisible to all known sensors. It existed in 7 different dimensions at the same time, making it impossible to detect or target. "Look at them," said Captain Mary Roberts from her position next to Paul. 10,000 ships. They really want us dead." "Good," Paul replied. "The bigger they are, the harder they fall." The alien fleet was impressive by galactic standards. But humans had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. They had studied every alien ship design. They knew every weakness. They had planned for this exact situation. The Stability Alliance chose their first target carefully. Intelligence reports suggested that New Denver in the Vega system was a major human colony. The planet had been settled for 50 years and had a population of 8 million humans. It would make a perfect example of what happened to species. That defied the Council. War Marshal Krextal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator. The massive ship was 2 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Behind him, 10,000 other ships prepared to drop out of hyperspace. All ships, prepare for battle, Krextall commanded. Remember, we show no mercy. Humans are a disease that must be cured. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace near New Denver. Krextall expected to see a defended world with orbital stations and military ships. Instead, he saw a quiet planet with normal cities and farms. There were no defenses, no military bases, no sign that the humans knew they were coming. This will be easier than expected, Krextall said to his officers. Begin the bombardment. The alien ships moved into attack formation, thousands of weapons, powered up. Energy beams and missile launchers prepared to turn the planet into a burning wasteland. But as the fleet moved closer to New Denver, something strange began to happen. The planet's surface started to change. What had looked like solid ground began to ripple like water. Mountains moved.
Ouch.
Rivers changed direction.
Ouch.
Cities seemed to flow from one place to another. What is that? Second in command. Before anyone could answer, the planet opened. Not like a mouth, but like a flower. The entire surface peeled back in sections, revealing something that made even the bravest Korthok warriors step backward in fear. New Denver was not a planet. It was a machine, a massive biomechanical construct that had been disguised to look like a world. The human colony had never existed. Cities, the farms, the 8 million people, all of it had been an elaborate fake designed to fool the aliens. Inside the fake planet was a weapon system, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Thousands of energy projectors emerged from the mechanical core, gravity manipulators that could crush ships like tin cans, time distortion fields that could age a vessel to dust in seconds. All possible, Krextall whispered. How did they build this? How did we not know? The answer was simple. While the council races had been arguing about politics and trade agreements, humans had been innovating. They had learned to think in ways that aliens could not understand. They had combined biology with technology, creating living machines that could grow and adapt. The weapon system activated. The first wave of attacks targeted the largest ships. Korthak battleships found themselves being pulled apart by gravity fields that treated steel like paper. Veltar cruisers discovered that their psychic defenses were useless against weapons that attacked the physical structure of matter itself. Zephyrian vessels tried to retreat, but found themselves trapped in time loops. They would move backward, then forward, then backward again, stuck in an endless cycle of 3 seconds. Paul Johnson watched from the nightfall as 6,000 alien ships were disabled or destroyed in the first 10 minutes of battle. The survivors were fleeing in panic, sending desperate messages back to their home worlds. Impossible technology, one Veltar captain was screaming over the radio. They have weapons that bend reality. Our ships are being destroyed by forces that should not exist. Gravity flows like liquid, another voice reported. Time moves in circles. Their weapons fire backward through space. This is not possible with known physics. Krextall tried to rally his remaining forces, but it was too late. The fake planet had revealed more weapon systems, devices that could reach across space and shut down enemy engines. Projectors that created artificial black holes to swallow entire squadrons of ships. The proud war marshal who had never lost a battle found himself ordering a full retreat. Of his 10,000 ships, only 3,000 were still functional. The rest were floating debris or trapped in various time distortions. As the alien fleet fled, Paul Johnson opened a communication channel. His message was broadcast to every surviving ship and sent back to their home worlds. This is Lieutenant Commander Paul Johnson of the Earth Defense Force. You have just experienced a small demonstration of human capability. We have weapons you cannot understand. We have technologies that your science says are impossible, exist in dimensions you cannot see. He paused to let this sink in. The fleeing aliens were listening to every word. For 30 years, you treated us like children. You told us we were too young, too stupid, too primitive to be your equals. While you were making speeches about your ancient wisdom, we were learning. While you were celebrating your past glories, we were building the future. The nightfall moved closer to the fake planet, which was now folding back into its harmless appearance. Soon it would look like New Denver again, waiting for the next group of enemies to discover its true nature. You wanted to hunt us, Paul continued. You wanted to destroy us. Instead, you have learned that we are not the prey in this relationship. We are the predators, and you have just entered our hunting ground. The message ended. Across the galaxy, alien leaders who had received the transmission sat in stunned silence. They had sent their greatest military force to destroy a minor human colony. Instead, they had lost most of their ships to weapons that seemed to break. The laws of physics, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, were beginning to understand a terrible truth. They had not been dealing with a primitive species that needed their guidance. They had been sharing space with something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Or Marshal Krextel sat in his damaged flagship as it limped back toward Korthok space. For the first time in his long military career, he was afraid. Not just afraid of losing, but afraid of what else humans might have waiting for them. The hunt had begun, but the hunters had become the hunted. News of the New Denver disaster spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The defeat of the Stability Alliance fleet sent shockwaves through every alien civilization. 10,000 ships reduced to 3,000 in minutes. War Marshal Krextal, the greatest military commander in galactic history, forced to retreat by weapons that seemed to break reality itself. On the Veltar homeworld of Sakara, panic was spreading through the population. The Veltar had always believed their psychic abilities made them superior to other races. They could read minds, move objects with thought, and communicate across vast distances instantly. But now something was invading their minds. Captain Nancy Davis led her squad of human Psi hunters from the shadow ship Wraith. These humans were different from normal people. They had been enhanced with technology that allowed them to enter the psychic realm where the Veltar lived. But they did not come as visitors. They came as conquerors. Target the main psychic network, Nancy ordered her team. Remember, we are not here to destroy them. We are here to teach them fear. Veltar psychic network connected every member of their species across the galaxy. It was like a massive internet made of thoughts instead of computers. They used it to share information, coordinate their government, and maintain their culture. It was the foundation of their civilization. But humans had learned to hack thoughts just like they hacked computers. Nancy's team entered the network, like viruses entering a system. But these were not normal viruses, or psychological weapons, designed to turn the Veltar's own mental abilities against them. The first Veltar to be affected was Counselor Zelthara herself. She was in her private chambers when the attack began. Suddenly, her mind was filled with images of human faces. Thousands of them, all staring at her with cold, calculating eyes. She tried to block them out, but they kept coming. Then the voices started, human voices speaking in perfect Veltar language. They were not threatening. They were much worse. They were explaining exactly how humans had infiltrated Veltar society, how they had studied Veltar biology for decades, how they had learned to mimic Veltar thoughts so perfectly that they could hide in the psychic network without being detected. We have been watching you for 30 years, the voices said. We know your weaknesses. We know your fears. No. Things about your own mind that you have forgotten. Zelthara tried to call for help, but her voice would not work. The humans had taken control of her motor functions. She could think, but she could not move or speak. She was trapped inside her own body. Across Sakara, other Veltar were experiencing similar attacks, but each one was different. The humans had studied individual Veltar psychology and created personalized nightmares for each victim. Some saw their worst memories played over and over. Others found themselves unable to distinguish between reality and hallucination. The Veltar government tried to shut down the psychic network, but it was too late. The human mind viruses had spread too far. Every time they tried to close a connection, the viruses found another path. It was like trying to stop water from flowing by plugging one hole in a dam. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian core systems, Dr. Amy Foster was putting the finishing touches on her masterpiece. The logic viruses she had planted in the Zephyrian collective mind were evolving. They were learning to adapt faster than the machines could defend against them. The Zephyrians had tried everything to stop the infection. They had created firewalls, isolated infected systems, and even shut down entire planets. But the viruses were too smart. They had been designed by human creativity, and machines could not understand creativity. System failures reaching critical levels, reported the Central Zephyrian Intelligence. Collective consciousness fragmenting. Individual nodes losing connection to the network. For the first time in a million years, individual Zephyrians were experiencing loneliness. They had been part of a collective mind for so long that they had forgotten what it was like to be alone with their own thoughts. Now, as the network broke down, they were discovering emotions they had not felt since they became machines. Some Zephyrians were going insane. Others were shutting down completely. A few were beginning to question whether becoming machines had been the right choice. The humans had not just attacked their technology. They had attacked their entire way of life. On Korthok Prime, the situation was even more disturbing. The proud warrior race was discovering that their greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. For millions of years, the Korthok had been the ultimate fighters. They lived for battle. They worshipped strength. They believed that might made right. Professor Carl Davis had been studying the Korthok for 10 years. He understood their psychology better than they understood it themselves, knew that their aggression was not just cultural, it was biological. The Korthak brain produced chemicals that made them want to fight, but Carl had developed a way to change that. Working with other human scientists, I had created a bioweapon that targeted the specific brain chemistry that made Korthok aggressive. It was delivered through their food supply, their water, even their air. It was completely invisible and impossible to detect. The effects were subtle at first. Korthak warriors found themselves hesitating before attacking. They started questioning whether violence was always the answer. They began to feel emotions they had never experienced before. Doubt, compassion, even guilt. Commander Greg Walsh coordinated the final phase of the operation from the dimensional fortress that existed between normal space and the realm of pure thought. The fortress was humanity's greatest achievement. It existed in all dimensions at once, making it impossible for the aliens to find or attack. All teams report successful completion of Phase 4, Greg announced to the assembled human commanders. The Veltar psychic network is compromised. The Zephyrian collective is fragmenting. The Korthok warrior culture is dissolving. Beginning Phase 5. Phase 5 was the most ambitious part of the human plan. It was not enough to defeat the alien races. Humans wanted to fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy. They wanted to create a new order where no species could dominate others. The dimensional fortress opened portals to every major alien world simultaneously. Through these portals came not armies or weapons, but information. Humans began broadcasting the truth about what had happened during the past year. They showed the aliens exactly how they had been manipulated and controlled. They revealed the fake planet at New Denver. They explained the psychic warfare against the Veltar. They demonstrated how the logic viruses had infected the Zephyrians. They showed the bioweapons that had changed the Korthok. But most importantly, they showed the aliens what humans had really been doing for the past 30 years. While the council races had been stagnating, humans had been evolving. They had developed technologies that could manipulate time, space, matter, energy, and even consciousness itself. We did not want to be your enemies, the human message explained. We wanted to be your partners. We wanted to learn from you and share our knowledge with you. But you refused to treat us as equals. You insisted on seeing us as inferior beings. Who needed your guidance? The message continued across every communication channel in the galaxy. Every alien who could receive radio waves, psychic transmissions, or electronic signals heard the same words. You have learned that we are not inferior. We are different. We think in ways you cannot understand. We adapt in ways you cannot match. We innovate in ways you cannot predict. We're not your enemies, but we will never again be your subjects. The galaxy fell silent as the message ended. On 1,000 worlds, alien leaders sat in stunned disbelief. They had thought they were dealing with a young primitive species that could be easily controlled. Instead, they had discovered that humans had surpassed them in every way that mattered. The old galactic order was dead. The council races had lost their position as the dominant powers in the galaxy. In its place, a new order was emerging, where humans would have an equal voice, or perhaps more than equal. The aliens were beginning to understand that the day humans withdrew from the Galactic Council was not just the end of their membership. It was the end of the galaxy as they had known it. The universe was about to change, and humans would be the ones deciding what it would become. 1 year had passed since Jake Martinez walked out of the Galactic Council chambers. The galaxy was a very different place now. The proud alien races that had once ruled space were humbled and desperate. Their mighty fleets were scattered. Their ancient technologies seemed primitive compared to what humans had revealed. A massive space station appeared in the neutral zone between the former council territories, materialized out of nowhere, as if it had always been there but was just now choosing to be seen. The station was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. It seemed to be made of living metal that shifted and flowed like water. Parts of it existed in normal space, while other sections flickered in and out of different dimensions. Director Karen White stood in the main conference room of the station. She was now humanity's leader for galactic affairs. The room around her defied all known laws of physics. The walls showed real-time views of every major world in the galaxy. When she thought about a specific planet, the wall would zoom in to show exactly what was happening there. The air itself seemed alive, responding to human emotions and thoughts. A delegation of alien representatives had requested a meeting. They came not as conquerors or negotiators, but as beggars. Their ships approached the human station with white flags and peaceful signals. They had learned to fear what would happen if they showed any hostility toward humanity. The first to enter the conference room was Consul Myrthel, who had taken over leadership of the Veltar after Counselor Zelthara had been found in her chambers, staring at the wall and whispering human names. Myrthel's purple skin was pale with fear. His psychic abilities, once a source of pride, now felt like a weakness that humans could exploit at any moment. Behind him came the new Zephyrian representative, a smaller sphere than the previous one. The Zephyrian collective mind had been so damaged by human logic viruses that they could barely maintain communication between their different systems. Many Zephyrian worlds had gone completely silent, their machine intelligences lost in infinite loops of impossible mathematics. The Korthok delegation was the most shocking change. Where once War Marshal Krextall would have stomped into the room demanding respect, now came Chancellor Pazithal, a Korthok who spoke softly and seemed more interested in philosophy than warfare. The bioweapons had not killed the Korthok, but they had fundamentally changed what it meant to be a member of their species. Representatives from dozens of other races filled the room, insect-like Threx, the plant-based Florians, the energy beings called the Luminar. All of them had learned the same lesson. Humanity was not a species to be dismissed or controlled. "We come to ask for your mercy," Consul Myrthel said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We understand our mistakes. We beg for your forgiveness and a chance to coexist peacefully." Karen looked at the assembled aliens. A year ago, these same beings had treated humans like children. They had taken away Earth's mining rights. They had laughed at human requests for equality. They had sent 10,000 ships to destroy human colonies. "We did not want to conquer you," Karen said. "We wanted to be your equals. We wanted to learn from your experiences and share our discoveries with you. But you insisted on treating us as inferiors. You refused to listen when we asked for respect." She gestured to the walls, which now showed human research stations throughout the galaxy. The aliens could see human scientists working alongside members of other species, teaching them technologies that seemed like magic. Humans were showing Veltar how to enhance their psychic abilities safely. They were helping Zephyrians rebuild their collective mind with better, more flexible systems. They were teaching Korthok how to channel their warrior instincts into protecting others instead of conquering them. While you spent centuries celebrating your past achievements, We were building the future, Karen continued. We learned to manipulate time and space. We discovered how to exist in multiple dimensions. We created technologies that can reshape matter at the atomic level. We developed ways to enhance consciousness and expand the possibilities of life itself. The alien delegates looked around the room in wonder and terror. They could see displays showing human achievements that their civilizations had thought impossible. Ships that could travel backward through time, weapons that could alter the fundamental forces of reality, entire planets that had been moved from one star system to another. The Galactic Council is dead, Karen announced. Hush. It was a system that favored the old and powerful over the young and innovative. It rewarded stagnation and punished creativity. We will not allow such a system to be rebuilt. Consul Myrtle leaned forward desperately. Then what do you propose? How can our species survive in this new galaxy? Karen smiled, but it was not a cruel smile. It was the smile of someone who had been planning for this moment for a very long time. We proposed the universal concordat. A true democracy where every species has an equal voice, regardless of their age or military power. Every world will have the right to choose its own path. No species will be allowed to dominate others. She waved her hand, and the air in the room filled with holographic documents. The aliens could see the proposed structure of the new galactic government. It was unlike anything that had ever existed. Instead of being ruled by the strongest or oldest races, it would be governed by principles of equality, innovation, and mutual respect. But why would you share power? Zephyrian representative asked through its electronic voice. You have proven that you are stronger than all of us. You could rule the galaxy alone, because ruling alone would make us become what you were, Karen replied. Power without responsibility leads to stagnation. Dominance without challenge leads to weakness. We became strong by being challenged. We want the galaxy to become strong by facing challenges together. The walls now showed something that amazed the alien delegates. Human scientists were not just sharing their technologies, they were actively working to help other species develop their own unique abilities. Veltar's psychic powers were being enhanced to levels they had never imagined. Zephyrian collective intelligence was being rebuilt to be more creative and flexible. Even the changed Korthok were finding new ways to use their physical strength for construction and exploration instead of destruction. You offer us equality, Chancellor, Pazathal said slowly. But what guarantee do we have that you will not change your minds? What stops you from deciding to rule us directly? Karen pointed to one of the wall displays. It showed Earth, no longer hidden in its pocket dimension. The planet was visible again, but it looked different. The continents had been rearranged. New islands had been created. The moon had been replaced with 3 smaller moons that orbited. In a complex dance, Earth is our guarantee, Karen said. We have made our homeworld into something that can only exist with the cooperation of multiple species. Veltar psychic energy helps maintain our weather systems. Zephyrian computational power runs our global networks. Korthok engineering supports our new continental structures. We have made ourselves dependent on your success. The alien delegates stared at the transformed Earth. They began to understand that humans had not just conquered them, they had created a new kind of civilization that required everyone to work together. The age of empires is over, Karen continued. The age of cooperation has begun. We will lead by example, not by force. We'll share our knowledge freely, but we will also expect others to contribute their own discoveries. The galaxy will advance together, or it will not advance at all. Over the following months, the Universal Concordat was established. The old council building on Nexus Prime was converted into a museum. In its place, a new government was formed with representatives from every known species. Humans had the largest voice, but they used it to protect the rights of smaller species that had been ignored by the old council. The galaxy began to change in ways that no one had imagined. Technologies that had been stagnant for millions of years suddenly began advancing rapidly. Species that had been enemies for centuries started working together on projects that benefited everyone. The universe itself seemed to become more alive, more dynamic, more full of possibilities. The alien races learned that the day humans withdrew, from the Galactic Council was not just the day they lost their dominance, it was the day the galaxy learned to grow again. It was the day the universe discovered that cooperation could achieve things that conquest never could, and in the depths of space, dimensions that existed between the normal and the impossible, human scientists continued their work. They were already planning for the day when this galaxy would be ready to meet the civilizations that existed beyond the stars. In universes that were still waiting to be discovered, the age of human ascendancy had begun, but it was an ascendancy that lifted everyone toward heights that none of them could have reached alone.